This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Mapper Forward's first on-demand workshop, How to Become a Coffee Consultant. Available now online for you to learn at your own pace with a certificate available upon completion. Click the link in the show notes to access today for just €50. Welcome to the Daily Coffee Pro by Mapper Forward, friends. I'm your host, Lee Safar, and this is episode 3 of our 5-part series about acquiring coffee knowledge. And in today's episode, Simon, we are going to have a conversation about accessibility to knowledge in the coffee industry. So what are your thoughts about accessibility?
Well, the accessibility to coffee knowledge is the reason why I got in coffee in the first place, and the reason why from day one I decided to that I want to work in coffee education or to sort of structure this knowledge. I think coffee knowledge is more accessible today than it was yesterday, and it will be more tomorrow, but there's still a long way to go. I still think that it's still very chaotic, it's not very structured, and it's difficult to have access to knowledge in general.
And
I think
very
the knowledge
expensive.
is there. There's a lot of knowledge. It can be expensive, but I think knowledge in general is expensive. I spent close to $100,000 in my education throughout my lifetime in bachelor and master degrees. So, and that's probably nothing compared to people who studied in the US. And whether that's a good thing or not, that's another debate. But education is expensive to a certain extent. But in coffee, it's not just about the price. It's also about the availability of some of these things. Not everything is available in a course. You have obviously books about coffee, you have websites, there are social media posts and articles and videos, but there's a bit of everything everywhere. It's really difficult to centralize all of that knowledge onto one place, onto one website. There are some attempts to tackle this, but we're, I think, still a long way from having university degrees, like official curriculums, where after high school you decide to study coffee, like you would decide to study wine, for example, or winemaking. It's not really a career option for a lot of people. I feel like it's probably been the same for you, but a lot of people that I meet in coffee, when you ask them, how did you get into coffee? Everyone tells you, oh, it was an accident. I was doing X, Y, Z, and then I accidentally got into coffee. And it seems that literally everyone gets into coffee by accident. There's very few people that have a long career and that sort of like foresee how their career is going to be, because there's a lack of structure around knowledge. Right. In my opinion.
I find that really interesting because I deliberately got into coffee. I left the corporate world.
Wow.
Yeah. So I was a senior business analyst and project manager at IBM. And I was doing that because I had got a degree in genetics and didn't want to work in a lab. And so I thought I'd try the corporate world. And then I realized the corporate world was not for me. And I was complaining about how it was like draining my soul. And I made a deal with myself that if I said that to myself one more time, I was going to go and do what I was passionate about. I was going to go learn how to make coffee. And so I started that career. And what I realized immediately was this is not a profession. This is a job. And I'm approaching this as a profession. And I was heavily penalized by my coworkers pretty much everywhere I went because I was taking the job too seriously. And so I was finding myself very confused everywhere I was because I was holding my coworkers to a certain standard. And so when they would say, this is the right thing, this is what tastes good and this is what tastes bad. And I would say, but why? And how do you know? And where is this coming from? So my background is in science, and my professional career, my professionalism comes from the corporate world. Now I'm in the hospitality industry, and those standards are very relaxed from a knowledge perspective and from a professionalism perspective. And I was looking at this in kind of the way of like, oh shit, I don't know how to belong here. I don't know how to be among people who decide that knowledge is acquired through opinion. This was diametrically opposed to everything I had been taught as a scientist.
yeah, well, you're looking for evidence, and then a lot of the time it's just beliefs and opinion.
Yeah. And of course, what does that do? That makes everybody around you feel very uncomfortable every time you ask a question. So, then the pursuit of, eventually map it forward starts to happen, because I want to address this thing that I can see as a big gap in our industry, which is like these really deep, rich conversations about how we drive an industry forward. So, you're talking about people accidentally finding their way into coffee, and then there's this place that doesn't have any structure, and how do we acquire knowledge? At what point do you think, because it's only the last couple of years that you've really started to see this uptick in SCA education, and this uptick in, everyone wanting to become a Q grader and all this kind of stuff. What do you think is driving that? Do you think it's this like industry that's decided we have to get professional, or do you think there's something else that's driving it?
I don't have the answer to that, but I do have my guesses. I think that while the industry is a lot younger than other industries like wine, for example, like cooking. So I think we will get there at some point. There are cooking schools, there are schools for chefs, there are schools for different like sub-discipline and subcategories of cooking, etc. Same thing in wine making, wine enology, etc. So we will get there. I think it's just a matter of time. The industry is probably a little bit young, and you go through these phases of chaos, and then things become a little bit more structured. And it's also, maybe social media has been a factor that contributed to that, where people are starting to understand the coffee world more. I think before social media, I bet a lot of people didn't know that coffee grew on trees and it was a fruit. And then now you can easily have access to photos and videos of farms and see how, what the whole process looks like. And that's fascinating. I think that's fascinating. And that might even drive some more curiosity and demand for the product, and for wanting to become part of the whole value chain in coffee. You see, when you see people travel the world that purchase coffee, meet people at origin, a lot of people see that as a fascinating lifestyle. I know thousands of people that would want to do that as a job, as a career, as a profession. So there might be that part that also drives this willingness to improve and to have access to more knowledge and structure that knowledge. But it does seem that people are quite eager to get access to knowledge and education.
My question is, why? And that's something that I am trying to understand. Is it that they want access to the knowledge to have the certificate at the end that validates that they have reached a certain point? Or is it because they actually want to learn? Because I recently came back from a trip, and what I found out, and becoming an AST in the region that I was in is a very popular thing. And it can become financially
status. You're an expert.
Exactly, right? Like you do this course, you become an AST, all of a sudden you've got an extra revenue stream, and you're now somehow an expert in coffee. The pursuit of that and the accessibility that it gives you to certain things is really quite a fascinating economy, I think.
Yeah, the reason why people follow that path, I like to believe that most people want to have access to, do these courses and want to have access to education, not necessarily just for the social status, or to have that expert status, but also to learn things. The reason why education exists in the first place, the reason why we go to school as kids is, it's a very interesting thing to think about. Like, why do we go to school? But one of the main reasons is to have access to knowledge, because knowledge is structured in a way and it's delivered in a way that is hopefully easy for most people to have access to and to assimilate. But it's to have this transfer of knowledge. That's why education exists. School is also there for people to learn how to interact with others, but sometimes we forget about that part, the social aspect of it. But the thing that you see is that if you were to try to learn things by yourself, you would take you much longer because it's not structured, because you don't have, it hasn't been thought in a way to sort of deliver this as efficiently as possible. And if I reflect on everything that I know about coffee, I'm certain that if I could construct a whole curriculum that lasts maybe 10 to 12 months, I could get people up to speed and have the same level of knowledge that I have in coffee if it was better structured. And maybe 12 months is ambitious because there are things that require experience, intuitions and things are a little bit less easy to quantify, that require a little bit of intuition, a little bit of experience in order to put in practice. But I'm certain that knowledge would be much easier to transfer and if it was better structured. So the idea of creating this accessibility means that it's sort of like fast tracked your career. And that's something that I definitely invested in when I got into coffee. I was kind of used to paying for education, going to private business schools in Europe and in Australia. So I didn't really think twice when I found about SEA courses, when I found about key reading. I did roasting courses. To me, it was just normal to be paying for a lot of courses because that's the best way to professionally learn about something. It was designed by, the curriculum is hopefully designed by an expert who's put some thoughts and work into how to deliver this content as quickly and efficiently as possible. So to me, it's a way to fast track your career and also fast track your knowledge about coffee. So the more accessibility we have to education, and it can be in various formats because people learn in very different ways. I learned how to cook. Cooking is one of my main passions, and I almost exclusively learn how to cook watching YouTube videos. And I think that's a great way to learn, for example.
That's awesome.
And I worked in restaurants and I did work alongside some very talented chefs. I picked a few things here and there, but I've watched thousands of hours of cooking tutorials and how to chop vegetables, etc. So I'm a visual learner, so it works for me. But other people would be better with reading a book. Some people are great at sitting in classrooms. So there's a wide variety of ways to learn, and people have different people learn in different environments. So again, accessibility doesn't have to just be like people sitting into one classroom and learning about stuff. It's about what's the most efficient way to transfer that knowledge from one person to another.
I mean, when I started in coffee, the way that we got access to knowledge was pick who you want to learn from, and you learnt from them on bar. And so that's how the transfer of knowledge happened, right? It was very much a craft. Work alongside them and learn like an apprenticeship.
But you still see that in the cooking world, where you have chefs going to Michelin-style restaurants and to be able to work alongside extremely talented people. And it's definitely true that, I mean, I've worked alongside very talented people, and I do work with talented people nowadays, and I learn heaps from these people on a daily basis. Surrounding yourself with experts is definitely a better way to learn. However, it's not always delivered in the most efficient way, because it takes, I mean, working alongside someone who's steaming milk perfectly, if you don't know how to steam milk, watching them doesn't necessarily, some people are incredibly good at sort of seeing something and just replicating it on the spot, but it just doesn't work for everyone. Some people need to be explained why you have to steam a certain way, how to position your jug. Exactly. Some people are just more visual in that sense, and some people are a bit more hands-on. Some people need to touch and see. So it might work for some people, but it definitely doesn't work for everyone. And I think by limiting this access to knowledge, or by not having this wide variety of accessibility, or not having structure in all these different ways you can access knowledge, is limiting the amount of talents that can get into the industry. There's a lot of people who are incredibly talented that are just left behind because it's seriously challenging to learn how to learn things in coffee. It's challenging to get information. It's challenging to verify if it's true or not. It takes a lot of work. It takes way more than it should, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think a big thing that we should say is that if you are trying to figure out what information that you want to learn, first learn how you learn. Like if
Yes.
it's really important for you to understand, like Simon mentioned, he's a visual learner. I'm a visual learner too. So if you show me how to do something, I'm much more likely to pick it up and then want to ask questions. And so folks, learn how you learn and then go and find who's teaching the way that you like to learn is a really great way to look at that. All right. So in the next episode, we're going to talk about, I think, my favorite of the subjects that we're going to talk about, which is trends in coffee. This is like the thing that breaks my brain every time I get into a conversation with somebody about it. So, and Simon and I have had this conversation over a coffee before. So this is going to be fun to have in front of you guys. So join us for the next episode where we're going to talk about trends in coffee knowledge transfer. This is going to be good. Peace, love, and peanut butter, everybody. Have an amazing rest of your day. Thanks for tuning in, friends. There are 2 ways you can support this podcast. Firstly, become a paid member of our YouTube channel. Secondly, you can join our Patreon for as little as $3 a month. Don't forget to subscribe and like this video before you leave and check the show notes for more information. Now, this is what you should check out next.